Greetings, listening audience. I'm Camille Shabazz of Macadamia University. I don't own the rights to this instrumental. Hoping all is well with you out there in the listening audience. As I'm going to dive right into the subject, as the poster indicates, the thumbnail indicates, the Machiavellian nature of the Nation of Islam. The Machiavellian nature of the Nation of Islam. Now, I know that's a very, very powerful thing to say. And the basis of me saying what I'm about to say is based on 35 years of personal experience as a captain, as a minister in the Nation of Islam. In public, in the free man's world, as well as in prison. So I have a wealth of information that backs everything that I'm saying. But above all the information is personal experience that guides this whole brief talk that I'm giving tonight, October 8th, 2022. So, if anybody knows about Niccolo Machiavelli, the 15th, 16th century advisor to the wealthy and powerful of Rome, I believe the Medici family, the Medicis. You know, he was such a powerful strategist that till this very day, his philosophy runs the political and religious world, and definitely runs the NOI and its leadership. Now, if we go back to Malcolm X in 1963, when he was literally hammering JFK with no precautions, no red light from Elijah Muhammad whatsoever. He was calling him John the Fox, exposing the Big Six, which consisted of Martin Luther King and Whitney Young and Asa Philip Randolph. So when JFK was assassinated and Malcolm said something about the chickens coming home to roost, and he got sat down for 90 days for that statement, while for 2 years prior to that, like I said, he was destroying JFK. And of course, the basis of the teachings of the Nation of Islam is that the white man is the devil. So what came out later, which was expressed in Malcolm's autobiography, you need to read it if you haven't. Elijah Muhammad's son, Wallace, had confided in Malcolm X that Elijah Muhammad had children outside of his marriage with his mother, Clara Muhammad. So when it came out that Malcolm had that knowledge, that put him in a position of power or potential power, because at that time, Malcolm had a powerful influence as the national representative over the whole organization and most of the minds of the men. So even though Malcolm was of pure heart and Malcolm was trying to clean it up and referred to Elijah Muhammad as being Solomon and being like David and making the scriptures correspond with those wicked deeds, he still was treated as an enemy, and that was the basis of his 90-day suspension, which of course he was never allowed back into the nation, and it was because of that knowledge that he had, which could have been detrimental to Elijah Muhammad's leadership and power. Then that information comes out later on about the wives under Farrakhan's leadership. And then they're embraced as being the wives, but they weren't embraced at all when it was first brought out. So that's the Machiavellian nature being demonstrated right there in that scenario, with Elijah's son going Machiavellian on him to drop the seeds in Malcolm's mind, which ended up causing Malcolm's demise. Now, if you fast forward to Khalid, who was the Khalid Abdul Muhammad, who was the national representative for Farrakhan in the 90s, up until about 1994, when he was thrown under the bus and his words were used against him. When he spoke at Kane College and spoke in a way that the Jews didn't like what he said and they found it to be offensive. However, everything that Khalid said was right in line with Message to the Black Man that says that the Jews are devils and were the first ones that Moses brought out of the caves. So why was it that Khalid was thrown under the bus? Why was it that Khalid was sold out? And why was it that he was given time out and treated the same way as Malcolm was treated and not allowed back into the Nation of Islam? For an offense which was really nothing but one that was a smack on the wrist at best. But when you're dealing with Machiavellian teachings, which once again is at the root of the dark arts, which is politics and religion, anything goes. Because as Machiavelli said, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. And that is what it's all about. Now, in my 35 years within the nation, I was laced by those of that Machiavellian mind under Abdul Karim Muhammad, who was the national representative of Farrakhan when I came into the nation in the 80s and was made a minister under Abdul Karim Muhammad in 1986. So dealing with those brothers and seeing their nature among themselves, how they were cutthroat and backstabbing all the time, it helped me to understand and see how they destroy one another and constantly revolve in this circle of civil war and self-destruction. Now, what happened with Rizza Islam? When I first heard the so-called leaked tape about 2 weeks ago, I said, before I say anything about the situation, I'm gonna listen more so I don't just, jump the gun, so to speak. And when I heard the tape, then maybe a week later, I heard a registered follower of Farrakhan being interviewed, and he said that was done at a believers meeting. I said, a believers meeting? That's damn near the same as putting it on the streets. Because a believer is only one who has their ex, for one. And a lot of times you have older believers who only come out to get the latest information to use it as gossip pieces. And when I heard it was given to the believers, I said, wow, that was indeed an assassination. That was also a shaming and humiliation tactic. Because you don't put the R word on nobody without proof. Because when you put the R word out there on anybody, for some reason, you are guilty before proven innocent. And everybody looks at you differently after that. So that in itself, where he states that from what I read, what I heard, what I read, and not what he knew. And he was just talking about what the girl said, and there was nothing being said about what Rizza's defense was. So when I heard that and saw that somebody leaked it out, I said, nah, that right there is a character assassination attempt, which really it worked. Because no one will ever look at that brother the same again. If that's not cleaned up, which I doubt if it could be cleaned up, he would never be able to rise in a position of power in that organization. He will not be able to do it. He will not be respected. And that was a terrible thing to do. That was an offense. Because from what I see, that's a valuable man to that organization. And you don't handle a situation like that publicly. That was supposed to be brought in and dealt with. But the way it was handled has now made it, since it's a public situation now, it's public knowledge, someone now legally can pick that up and it could become a case and go like even further. Someone like Gloria Allred, one of those wicked demons, could get a hold of it and turn it and spin it into something entirely different. But as I've been saying, we're in a new age. And what that brother need to do is keep it pushing. Because as I've been teaching, it's all coming down. And most of it is going to implode from within. Because the foundation is rotten to the core and is built on sand. Lies and deceit. So the Machiavellian mindset is there and it will never go anywhere because it's entangled in the very nature of the group. Going all the way back to when Elijah Muhammad was on the run for his life because Augustus Muhammad and those other followers disagreed with him being a leader. And he had to literally dress in drag to go out because the hunt was on for his life. So that's the whole nature of that group. And it shall continue until it self-destructs, as all these religions are going to do. And if you look at when that happened, I told you about the planets being in retrograde and how Uranus, that sideways planet, when people are acting sideways, which that was a sideways move, they're not going to be successful. And Uranus, ironically, is in retrograde all the way up until the 22nd of January. And that's that number 22, the number of destruction, disorganization, and chaos. And that's what all religions are suffering today until their complete ruin. So I hope that you got something out of this and understand the time we're living in, because these ministers are ministers according to our definition. Ministers, menaces, who keep chaos and confusion going on to fleece and take the minds of the people. Have a wonderful evening. Peace and salute.